For what do we practice to develop mind? When we study any subject, the purpose is to gain knowledge and understanding in such a subject. It is the same in studying Buddhism. If we study to practice the teachings, we will surely have the same objective. When we want to practice the teachings, we have to know and understand first, for what do we practice to develop mind? To boast? To be a magician who has magic, might, and can do magic action? These are not the right purposes in Buddhism. The only one objective of the teachings and propagation of Buddhism by the Lord Buddha to all teachable persons is for them to know and understand suffering and cessation of suffering. Practicing to develop mind is mainly aimed to annihilate one's suffering. This is the essence of Buddhism. In fact, every life has suffering that is physical and mental discomfort due to birth, old age, illness, and death, which we can see and understand easily in our daily life. In order to cease suffering, correct practice according to the Buddhist teachings is required. At first, we have to believe in the truth of life, that our lives are suffering. Then we are to seek how to extinguish suffering by studying to gain knowledge from Buddhism. We practice the teachings in order to sense the truth of life that is suffering. It is real suffering because our body is not permanent. It is transient, involved in suffering and soullessness. These are the truths. We have to practice the teachings to attain insight into the state of compounded things. Every life has suffering, both physical and mental, that cannot be seen by eyes, but by wisdom only. We have to train our mind to attain knowledge of this truth that is suffering. If we can train our mind so well that mind is concentrated and develops wisdom to have thorough knowledge of the truth of body, that it is the state of constant flux, by being aware of the truth according to the three characteristics: impermanence, state of suffering, and state of non-self. That is a real knowledge of suffering. We can say that we practice to develop mind till we attain insight into the truth of the body as it is. It is suffering. It is insight wisdom developed from the mental practice to a certain degree. Suffering that we strive to practice to see does not reside anywhere else but in our body, but we lack mindfulness and clear consciousness to realize it. In Buddhism, suffering is mind and matter, nama, rupa, which always arise, fall away, and change. That is why we have to practice to develop mind to cultivate perfect mindfulness and clear consciousness by concentration meditation and insight practice in Buddhism. If we want to give a direct answer to for what do we practice to develop mind, we have to answer we do so in order to see the truth of body, that it is suffering all the time. The body and mind of all lives always arise, fall away, and change. We have to practice our mind to see suffering in our body. We will then understand by ourselves. The truth of life is that body always keeps changing. After we are born, we grow up, become teenager, adult, old man, and die finally. This is our life. It keeps changing from baby to old man and dies eventually. They are mind and matter in our body that keep changing all the time. The state of constant flux is the state of suffering, which we cannot see with our eyes. Therefore, we have to practice our mind according to the Buddhist means, so that we can see and know the truth of the mentioned suffering. People in general cannot have thorough knowledge of this truth, since their minds are occupied by defilements. Mind under the power of defilements, cravings, attachment, and unwholesomeness is dirty mind without purity. We therefore have to practice mind to scrub defilements off the mind so that we can cultivate mindfulness and clear consciousness to be able to realize the truth of life that is real suffering. It is not ourselves. We will develop wisdom to agree with the teachings of the Lord Buddha. We can also say that we practice mind to eradicate completely defilements piled up in inborn trait. If we can eradicate or annihilate defilements, it means that we can end our suffering. We have to practice mind to cultivate perfect and qualified mindfulness and awareness to know and realize the truth of our life, that it always changes to decay. Life is body and mind, rupa and nama, or suffering. It changes according to the three characteristics, which are transience, suffering, and soullessness. These are the common characteristics of all conditioned things. To practice to see thoroughly that it is suffering, we have to practice mind by concentration meditation and insight meditation to develop qualified mindfulness and clear consciousness. In conclusion, we practice to develop our mind in order to attain thorough knowledge of the truth of life, that it is suffering according to the three characteristics: transience, suffering, and soullessness. They are characteristics of suffering of all lives in the world. The mentioned suffering is rupa nama, body and mind in our body. They are in a state of constant flux. We cannot see this process with our eyes, but with the insight developed by mental practice according to the Buddhist means.